Hello, my friends. This is Noah, and I am here to talk to you today about something that's on a lot of our minds right now. As LLM nerds and systematic reviewers and meta-analysis lovers, and lovers of all things statistics, a lot of us are thinking about automating our systematic reviews right now. The question is, should we? And can we? And how can we? So this is going to be the first in what is probably going to end up being a multi-video series over the course of the next few months or years or however long it takes to get through this. Because this is a topic that's really becoming popular right now. This is going to be something that's increasingly important into the future as researchers start to decide, can we and should we automate our systematic reviews? The reality is we can, but should we is a completely different question. So let's take a look at the roadmap that we are going to go on for today. I'm not sure how long this video is going to take, but hopefully it'll be relatively quick. So first, I'm going to talk really briefly about the premise. I'm going to tell you about some of the tools that we have right now that can help you automate your systematic review. We're going to talk a little bit about the evidence for these tools. And then lastly, we're going to talk about my current thoughts about should we, at this point in time today, the 26th of June, 2025, should we automate your review? So let's get started. The overall premise that we are dealing with as researchers, as students, as nerds interested in all things artificial intelligence and the internet is, it's now possible to automate our systematic reviews. But should we? Should we do this? That is the critical question. So let's take a look at some of the tools that are available out there, okay? First and foremost, we have this new one that just came out, literally just came out a couple weeks ago, I think. It's showing up on LinkedIn, at least the preprints and stuff are really showing up on LinkedIn a lot. It's called Otto-SR. It might just be called Otto, but I think it's called Otto-SR. It's a little confusing for me because they say Otto-SR, but then in their little logo, it just says Otto. So, you know, branding. That's there, Otto. So this is new. It's not yet available at the time that I am recording this. Next, huge thank you to viewer whose name, I think your username is Voodis, if I remember this right, and there might be some numbers after it. But they sent me an email mentioning this tool called MetaScreener. It looks awesome. It's open source. We're going to talk about that one too. You want to know why? Because it's open source and it's available to you right now on GitHub. We're going to check that out. The link's going to be in the description. Last but not least, we have good old-fashioned prompting and prompt engineering. This is exactly what it sounds like. Now, let me put on my academic hat for a moment, okay? And I will tell you this. I currently have some people who are working with me on prompting to see how well prompts can be used for LLM abstract screening. We've been doing this for the last few months, on and off, and there's also a couple papers already existing, not by me, but by a number of people around the world, doing this exact thing. Some of it shows promise with just prompting, but I can tell you that from our findings so far, they're not public facing yet, so I can't show you a preprint or anything, but informally, from our findings so far, just like coming up with a prompt off the top of your head, I would not recommend that. It's going to have to be a more structured prompt. That brings us to these other approaches, okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about Otto-SR, we're going to talk a little bit about MetaScreener, and I'll throw in some kind of tidbits from what I've learned from our prompt experiments so far. So let's take a dive into the internet and go check out Otto-SR. All right, my friends, so here we are on the Otto-SR website. This is what it looks like. As you can see, it's relatively sparse right now, okay? So they have some cool visualizations and a modern-looking website. That's fun. I went ahead and signed up, and I did get a form email back saying you have access, but it didn't do anything. So if you happen to try and sign up and you get something other than just a form email that says you're now signed up but doesn't actually do anything for you, let me know, because I'd really love to get access to this and run some of the reviews that I have through it. But you can see they have all sorts of interesting information here, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to focus on that. What I want to focus on is the data. So this is the preprint that they have put forward, okay? And so there's, of course, going to be a link in the description to this. So you don't have to go search for it. But here's what I want to point out. They found Otto-SR outperformed traditional dual human workflows. So Otto-SR had almost 97% sensitivity and 98% specificity as compared to the human, which is listed right here. Next, for data extraction, they also report really good accuracy. Look at this. They also said that they reproduced and updated some reviews, yada, yada, yada. I'll leave this for you to go check out on your own. But here's what I want to point out. The authors of this paper, who've also presumably created the Otto-SR website, they're claiming really, really good findings, right? So like 97% sensitivity, 98% specificity, that is freaking awesome. If it's replicable across all different areas of science, that would be absolutely amazing. I just haven't seen it replicated yet because it's just starting to get passed around. Like these ideas are just starting to get passed around. Their website just came out. This preprint just went up. Does it have a date that's easily accessible? Yeah, posted June 19th. Okay, so this is like literally a week ago. This preprint got posted. Okay, and so this just came out. So because this just came out, it hasn't really been replicated yet, right? And in all honesty, I don't remember the full text. I don't remember if they tell us all of the prompts and everything they use for every single step. But something that they have published, we're going to jump over to their prompt template paper. So they do have a paper about prompt templates for systematic review screening for the abstract and the full text. And so if you go into this paper, you can read all about their process. But I suspect what you're going to be most interested in is actually the supplementary materials. At least that's what I was most interested in. So first, I'll just tell you a bit about the results. They tested a variety of different types of prompts in a number of different LLMs. Long story short, they liked GPT the most, and that is also where they did their prompt development, was in GPT. So it makes sense that GPT was the most effective since that's where they developed the prompts, but that's a bit of a side story I'm going to rant about later. But anyway, if you go into the supplementary material, they actually provide for you the prompt templates that they use and that they found these results for. And so presumably you can go into that supplementary material, you can check out those prompt templates, and you can replicate it yourself. Keep that in mind, okay? We're going to think about that a little bit later. So that is there, provided on the supplementary materials of this article, assuming you have access to this article. Again, I'm going to include the link in the description. So that brings us through Otto-SR. Results initially look really good, right? We're looking and we're seeing really nice sensitivity. We're seeing really good specificity for both of these things. Like here they talk about for abstract screening. So they had a range here, but they have a weighted of 98%, specificity of 85% in abstract screening. And then we talk about full text screening. They talk about sensitivity of 97% and specificity of 90%. These are pretty dang good, right? Like these would make me pretty happy as a reviewer. I would consider using something like this. So let's move on. Let's move to the next tool, okay? The next tool is an open source tool. This is the GitHub repo. It's called MetaScreener. If you prefer to use the website, it looks like this, and it's metascreener.net. Again, link will be in the description. So their website's pretty easy to use, and it actually is up and running. So if you look here, you can see you can choose a number of different AI providers. The one thing that makes me a bit sad at the moment is we don't have Ollama yet, but you know, you can. It's open source. You can fork it and add Ollama yourself if you want to. I'm assuming, I would guess some of the other forks might already have that. But long story short, you can go through all these different steps. I'm not going to go through all of them right now. I actually haven't tested this yet. I just know it exists. So keep that in mind. I have not actually gone through and tested this yet, but it is there. It is open source for you. And now let's check out what they say they found with their tool. So first and foremost, they say it's about human AI partnership. I love that. I think that's how we should be using AI right now. Next, they say privacy first, and they say that your data stays secure, processing happens locally. Now, I want to put a caveat on this, okay? So I think I understand what they were saying. I think they have designed this so, for example, if you look back at their website, it says that your API keys are stored in your browser session only. But I find this statement of your data stays secure because processing happens locally to be a little bit misleading, because you are sending data via API to these different AI providers. Otherwise, they couldn't analyze it. So that is something to keep in mind here, that it might be some data is staying secure and happening locally, but if they're using external APIs to send data to a large language model that does not exist on your machine, I do not understand how that's processing locally. That doesn't make sense to me at all. But anyway, we'll move past that. And I want to show you guys what they talk about down here for the results that they found. So they have some cost estimates and things using the built-in AI providers that are available to you. They walk you through some of the steps. But somewhere on here, I'm trying to find it. Here we go. Here's the research validation dashboard that they provide. They say they looked through 4,230 articles. Sensitivity was 95 to 97%. Specificity, 85 to 92%. Cohen's kappa, 0.85 plus, which is pretty good. Time reduction listed here, and cost efficiency listed here. So here's the thing, guys. This is comparable, right? This is pretty comparable to what we were just seeing on Otto-SR. Except this one's open source, right? Except this one's open source. So here's what I need to dig into that I have not had time to dig into yet. I want to look and see what the default prompts are that are being used for each one of the steps within MetaScreener, because I think that will be a really interesting investigation to see what types of prompts they're using. And then if you did, for example, want to use the prompts from Otto-SR. Maybe you found that that was better. Maybe you really like GPT, so you want to use GPT-specific prompt. Maybe you could take that template and then apply it to your custom forked version of MetaScreener. Just saying. Might work, right? Might work. So I'm really excited about where this is going right now. Okay, on one hand, I'm super pumped because reviews take forever. They really do. They take a long time to do all this stuff. But at the same time, I'm very hesitant. Part of that, I'm sure you guys are like, well, no, it's because your career is based on doing reviews and publishing reviews and meta-analyses. And guess what? You're right. It kind of is, right? Like, that is a big part of my research agenda, is doing meta-analysis and systematic reviews. But I'm always for things that help my workflow. But I do have concerns. Okay, so let's jump over and talk about some of the concerns that I have. Okay, so as we are considering this question of should we automate our systematic reviews, my personal opinion as of today, having not tested Otto-SR, having not tested MetaScreener, having only done my own experiments using prompts and coming up with my own prompts to send to large language models to try and replicate screening that took place in my previous meta-analyses. If you ask me today, should we fully automate our systematic reviews? My answer is we're not quite there yet. Let me talk about why, okay? So here's some reasons. First and foremost is prompt specificity. It is extremely well known that models are sensitive to the prompt, and it varies by model. So for example, if you use one prompt template and you send it to GPT, it might get a completely different result in Gemini, or a completely different result in DeepSeek, or any of these other things. So while it's a brilliant idea to have these templates, we need to keep in mind that they're specific to the model. Okay, they may not be generalizable across models. And this presents some problems because we can't just blanket say, oh, use this, it's going to be perfect. We can't do that, right? Because we know models are sensitive to prompt. Second, so far, we have relatively limited replication of this. And what I mean is tools like Otto-SR. I mean, I showed you guys the preprint. It came out 7 days ago. MetaScreener. It came out, I think, back in May, but I didn't hear about it until viewer Vudis sent me an email and was like, hey, check this out. And at the time, man, I can't even tell you. I know you guys can probably imagine my face when I read that email, and I was like, oh, this is a cool new tool, and it's open source. Like, oh man, so pumped about that, so excited. I just haven't had time to actually go dig into it yet. But what I'm seeing as an AI embracer, but also someone who really sees value in well-done systematic reviews and meta-analysis, is we are seeing a lot of big claims that are not yet replicated by others. So the research teams who created these tools, they've done research, they've published it, or at least they got preprints up. That is awesome. Now I want to see other people in other fields go and replicate those results and see similar specificity, similar sensitivity, and see these really promising results. Because if we can see that across a bunch of different fields with a bunch of different reviews, possibilities are endless, right? So next we move into this idea of context. I always say context matters with like everything in education, which is my field, but I think context matters a lot in this case because some reviews are used for really important decisions. Take, for example, medical treatments and medical decision-making. Do you want to trust medical decision-making to an AI model? And you might be like, well, yeah, they're pretty smart. Are they though? Like, are all of them pretty smart? Let me give you an example. You guys who've watched the channel know that I tend to ask every single local model that I test what the largest falcon in the world is. And you know what? Some of them get it right and some of them get it wrong. Yet it is a very, very, very simple question. So given that context of like it can get a basic scientific question wrong, are you going to trust a model to go through and screen potentially thousands of studies and then extract data from them? And we all know how good LLMs are at numbers, by which I mean they totally are terrible a lot of the time with anything mathematical. At least that's been my experience. So if you know some that are good at math, I'm sure there's some that are good at math, but a lot of times I found I don't trust them to do any sort of math whatsoever because I found so many errors. But anyway, that's besides the point. I won't rant about that. My point here is that your context matters. Some reviews are used for really high impact decision making. If you work in one of those fields, you need to really critically think, not only as an individual, but as somebody working in your field, do you have that much trust in the model? That's a really important question that only you and your field can answer. Last but not least is model bias and changes. And so I'm not going to rant about this too much because sometimes my friends look at me like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat or something when I talk about this. But something you need to keep in mind is that these models are not all the same. right? They are all dependent on training data, which means they are inherently biased by that training data. This means that essentially whatever training data you put in it biases the narrative and can allow the creator of this model to craft the narrative. It can say things more or less kind of like what you want them to, right? This can be a problem. This could be a problem. I'll let your imagination run wild, depending upon your field, of what that might mean. But imagine, for example, that you work in whatever field you work in, and somebody sees something the complete opposite of you, but they're the ones who create all of the AI models. Do you think that AI model is going to be balanced and fair, or do you think it will kind of naturally lean more towards their viewpoints? So that's the kind of thing that I mean when I say models are biased. I'm not pointing towards any particular model here. I'm not trying to call out models or anything like that. I'm just saying I think all models are biased because all of them are biased by whatever training data gets fed into them. So they might be biased towards something where they're really good at something, might be biased towards where they're really terrible at something else. So I'm not going to rant on about that other than I think it needs to be considered in this context and also more broadly. Last but not least, these closed source models, the ones that exist out there, GPT, Claude, Gemini, but some of these other ones that are behind closed doors, we don't have the weights and everything. You just pay for the API service. Those models can change behind the scenes and they might not tell you. So do you still trust it? Yeah, so anyway, I don't want to rant about this. I'm just going to say I do not like the idea that models can change behind the scenes. I find that very problematic for a case such as this, where it has such high impact, potentially, on our complete understanding of a certain field and the impacts of something in a field. So altogether, this makes me arrive at nope. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're there yet for published journal articles that are fully automated. So the question is then, what would I consider automation for right now? Like if we're in the systematic review realm. And I will say, I'm actually kind of excited about this because I have some things that I want to build just kind of for fun. First and foremost would be things of limited impact. And what I mean by that are for your own personal use or knowledge updates. So one of the examples that I'm thinking about in relation to this is what I would consider a living textbook that could openly be wrong. So what I mean by that is, if you subscribe to Google Scholar, for example, it will send you articles that it thinks are within your domain of expertise or your areas of interest, right? It'll send you an email every now and again, be like, hey, check out these new articles, blah, blah, blah. So I got to thinking, my main area of work is around pedagogical agents and virtual characters, and everything I know about them is basically locked up in my brain. But what if we were to design a review like this that could be fully automated, and then we just connect a couple steps to it, where we then have LLMs doing summaries and analyses, and it essentially puts us into an open textbook for us, and it puts it on the web, right? So hopefully you get what I'm saying with this, but it's going to essentially be a continuously living update on everything that is known about, for example, virtual characters. And anyone can go there and reference it at any time, and you'd be able to link to the direct sources and in the way that my brain operationalizes this. I think that could be a really cool tool, especially if it's openly acknowledged that this is all AI generated and can be totally freaking wrong. Right? But it gives people the resource to be able to go and find the right answer themselves and confirm it. So I think something like that, a very limited impact that's mainly just for your own personal use or updating what you know, that could be really cool. The other thing that would really change my mind about this is if we start seeing a lot of replications in different fields and the results are really similar. But right now, we're not quite there yet. So I'm going to conclude the video there, and I'm going to ask you guys, what do you think? Based on right now, what do you think about automating systematic reviews? Would you do it? Would you not do it? What field do you work in? Like, help add some context here for where you think there's value, what you're excited about, and what you're worried about. Okay, that's what I'm most interested in. So quickly, so you have an idea of where I'm going to take this series. If I end up getting access to Otto-SR, I would love to be able to go through and show you some of the data sets that I have and see if we can replicate what I found. Similarly, with MetaScreener I know I have access to because it's open source. At some point, I don't know when this is going to be, so I can't promise it's going to be anytime soon, but hopefully in the next month or two, I'm going to go into MetaScreener. I'm going to test that out. I'm going to try using my own data sets and see if we can replicate what's happening in my data, which was human coded, human data extracted, etc. I want to try doing that in MetaScreener and see, is that tool at a place where we can actually work on it? And if it's not, here's the thing, if it's not, what I would love to do is create a fork and have all of us contribute in the ways that we know. So I don't know for sure that we're going to do this yet. I'm still kind of juggling the mentalness of like, do I want to manage something like that? And part of me is like, heck yeah, dude, let's do it. It's going to be awesome. And the other part of me is like, you have so little time. You haven't even made a video in like 2 weeks. And I'm like, but how cool of a tool would this be? So the one thing I will say is if we do something like this, I want to make sure we keep it open source. I do not want people to have to pay for it. I love the idea that MetaScreener, the developers of MetaScreener have done, where they have created this and they have it out there so that everybody can use it, because it is, I mean, from first glance, I can't say, I haven't looked at the code or anything like that. I've just kind of navigated through the website a bit. It looks sweet, guys. Like, I'm sure there's ways it can be improved, but there's so much infrastructure there already that we could build on it, and we could really make something awesome. So let me know your thoughts on that too. Is that something that you guys would be interested in doing? Yeah, and with that, I'm going to stop talking so I don't just ramble on forever. So I hope you guys have an absolutely awesome week. If you are pumped about this idea, please like and subscribe to the channel. Like I said, I do intend on having more about these types of things in the future, about automating systematic reviews and meta-analyses. I just want to make sure we keep it balanced, okay? You should know by now, I'm not one of those people who's like, use AI for everything. We got to make sure it's doing good science. If it's not doing good science, we can figure out a way to work with it so we can do good science and still save ourselves time. So that said, have a great afternoon. I will see you all in the next video.